My name is Brian, and in this video we're going to cover some concepts furthering our knowledge of the pentatonic polygons. So I didn't address the B and G string. As you may or may not know at this point, the B and G string, they kind of mess things up, specifically going from the G string into the B string. The reason for that is that everything gets pushed over by one fret, and it has to do with the way that the guitar is tuned. One way you can physically see that is if you've ever seen people tune in unison, they tune off of the 5th fret, and then once they get to these two strings, they go back by one fret. So what that means is anything that you play, like for example a 5th, all works. Maybe I should do an example like this: 5th, 5th, 5th. Well, that's not a 5th. That's the tritone. Oh no. But if you push it over by one fret, it comes back to a 5th, and then after that it's back to normal. So anytime you cross from the G string into the B string, everything's going to get pushed over by one fret. So this also applies to our pentatonic polygons. So there's essentially 4 unique shapes. There is the rectangle, the square, the boat, and the ramp. Okay? And all we have to do is take all those shapes and just move them over by one fret. So for example, if we're looking at, what did we start off with? We started off with the rectangle, right? Well, if you put that rectangle on the B and G strings, it looks like this. So that's a rectangle. Normally I'd play straight down, but I have to push it over. So now you get what I call the big rhombus, or if you're British folk, the parallelogram. But normally, that's just a square, a big rectangle. But because it's crossing into the B string, it gets pushed over. So a rectangle becomes a rhombus. Pretty straightforward. Okay, we dealt with squares earlier. Well, if you have a square, okay, a square would normally be right here. That doesn't sound right. It gets pushed over. And this too is a rhombus, but I call it the diamond, just to delineate the difference. So a square becomes a diamond. It's the same thing. Okay. What happens to the boat and the ramp? Okay, well, I have uncreative names for this. I call it the reverse boat and the reverse ramp. So for example, if we were here, normally it would be a boat, which would be like this, but it doesn't work, so the boat goes the other direction now. And what was normally the diagonal line where the boat and ramp connect are now a straight line. So now you have the opposite ramp. Because normally it would be like this. But it doesn't work because of that B string phenomenon. Now the rules still apply. The boat and the ramp are still connected, except it's kind of topsy-turvy land. So that's reverse boat, reverse ramp, which is surrounded by squares or also diamonds. And the diamond surrounds a rhombus, which is a rectangle. Diamond. So this still applies, but uniquely for the B and G strings. So that's kind of something to be mindful of. It's one of the inconveniences of guitar, but that tuning anomaly is what allows us to play all these chords, and that's actually where this instrument really shines. Anyway, I digress. So that's addressing the B and G strings. And then for those of you who are exploring diatonics, which are the missing 2 notes from pentatonic, there's some upgrades here. So let's talk about it. I like picking on the rectangle first. So if you have a rectangle, your extra notes are always going to be those 2 diagonal lines. I mean, those 2 notes making a diagonal line. So your extra notes are going to be there every single time inside of a rectangle. It's true no matter what string you're on. And it's true even if you're playing like the B, G string anomaly. Those are your extra notes. just remember it gets pushed over. So anytime in a rectangle, those are your 2 extra notes. Additionally, anytime you have a rectangle, this bottom right corner is going to be your major key center, or key signature, major key signature. So we've been playing everything in the key of G/E minor, whatever, same thing. But I know anytime I'm in the corner of a rectangle that this is my major key center, if that makes sense. And as a result, you have 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Those are intervals, by the way. And that's true even when you're dealing with the rectangle. So that's your key signature right there. Bottom right corner. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. And this is true no matter what string you're on. So if you're here, that's a rectangle. That's your key center. And those are your extra notes. Okay? So that's a rule with the rectangle. The square, unless you're dealing with chromatic notes or blue notes, we're not quite there yet, you're never going to have a note within a square, unless it's an exception. So no notes within squares. Let's see, boat and ramp. So we first encounter the ramp. Well, this top left corner is always going to be your key signature. So anytime you have a ramp, this top left corner is your key center, or major key center. So that's a 1. Now, for extra notes, the ramp kind of becomes pretty boring because the extra notes are right here. I hope you're starting to see this diagonal line theme. Okay, anyway, if you include those 2 notes, you end up getting this. So that diagonal line, that signature of the ramp is like dissolved and it just becomes kind of like a stack. So those are your upgrades. Now if you can kind of put them together, the boat, sorry, this is a boat, you're still going to get those 2 diagonal lines, and so as a result the boat is kind of less exciting, it's just straight lines again. And as a result, the top right corner is going to be your key center no matter what string it's on either, if you're playing a boat. Okay? So those are some like little tricks of the trade if you want to apply that to your pentatonic polygons. One last point, so even if we're dealing with the weird reverse boat and reverse ramp, it's still the same thing. So normally we'd be playing this as a boat, right? And those would be your extra 2 notes. Well, there you go. So that's the ramp. And then these are your 2 extra notes. Sorry, it's a boat. And as a result, anytime you have the reverse ramp, again, this corner is still your key. The extra notes are yeah, it's right back there. Yeah. So I hope that helps, and hopefully it gets you moving more laterally through the neck and getting less intimidated by the giant scale box, but do realize that that's all that just what fits inside your guitar. So those are the Pentatonic Polygons Part 2.